Hey, 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 we're back, we're black. Well, I'm black. We're brown, we're extra brown today. Ambition, 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 ambition. We got some extra brown in the stew today, right? We have Yanely Espinal.
Espinal.
Espinal. Yanely Espinal. Yanely, where you from?
Dominicana from
Oh,
Brooklyn.
okay, that's what we talk about, right? That's why I said we're extra brown up in here today, right? We got a Dominicana, how do you say Nigeria? Like how do they say it?
Oh, I don't know. How do you
It's
say
very
Nigeria?
phonetic. It's like I've heard people say it's like
Nigeria?
yeah, Nigerian, right? We got them both in the stew today. But let me tell you more about Imani before we dig in. Yanely is a Brooklyn-born ball of energy, as you will see, with an intimate knowledge of financial education, culture, and politics in America. Known as the internet as MissBeHelpful, she's a millennial financial educator who started her career as a teacher. And you already know I love that because, teachers unite.
Girl.
And now serves as the director of educational outreach at Next Gen Personal Finance. She is currently on a political roller coaster ride across the country, convincing lawmakers successfully, I might add, to make personal finance a high school graduation requirement. The girl is getting laws passed. Okay, you thought it was only me? Oh, no.
We working, girl. We working.
Yes. Over the last 4 years, Yanely has been instrumental in working with governors and state legislators to pass legislation that requires personal financial education in order to graduate in Florida, in Michigan, in Georgia, in Rhode Island, in North Carolina, and more, I'm sure.
Yes.
And so, honestly, Yanely she's just you will see, a ball of energy, super smart, and making a huge difference and shift as it relates to financial education, but in a way that's super tangible. And so I just love that. And we're excited that we have Yanely here. You can see her on CNBC. Let me see what else. I think so. Well, welcome, Yanely. Thank you for coming. She's a new author of this amazing book called Mind Your Money. I got it in my hand. If you watch this on YouTube, you would be able to see it. First of all, you'd be able to see that Yanely's wearing this pop of pink. She looks so pretty. Okay, I'm giving gold. I'm serving gold, okay?
Yes.
Her book is Insightful Stories and Strategies to Help You Reach Your #money goals. Welcome to the stew, Yanely.
Thank you so much, girl. This is wild. A dream come true. I love you. I love Mandy. I actually got to meet Mandy in person at FinCon. Got to meet you in person at the Wealth Building Conference for Black and Latina women. And have been in awe of you since 2015, 2016, and of Mandy since 2018 when I started listening to Brown Ambition. So I'm the one that's honored to be on.
Well, we're happy to have you here. So let's get started. First of all, what did you teach before when you said you're a teacher? So what grade did you teach?
So I was a third grade teacher my first year, fourth grade for the second and third year. And then I pivoted out to wraparound services and nonprofit literacy intervention.
Okay. So then how did you make it? Because a lot of teachers sometimes listen, or people who just want to pivot. How did you make this pivot from elementary school teacher to, director of, education?
Yes,
no, you're right.
Educational outreach. So what I did was I was kind of thinking okay, what are the adjacent skill sets that I could leverage, right? Because the reality is as a teacher, you have so many skills. You know this. I mean, getting in front of kids and getting them to think that fractions are so exciting, you have to sell that. So you have sales skills, even though you don't call it sales in the classroom, that's what it is. You have communication skills, presentation skills, oral communication, as well as email written communication. You have the ability to plan long term. You think out, for the whole rest of the scope and sequence for your school year, you're planning ahead, management skills because you're project managing class trips and all kinds of, events and concerts and things. So I just felt okay, there are way too many skill sets that I developed in my few years teaching for me to sleep on that and act like that's not a big deal. So instead of just limiting myself to education, I started thinking, all right, I want to learn about business. I want to learn about making money. So how do I do that in a way that's still connected to my education skills? And so I actually started working for a private education company first. Right after teaching, I became the director of an after school center that did math and reading after school. And then, I learned how to collect tuition from parents and run the tuition, run the numbers, pay the bills for the center and, call people up and remind them, advertise, market the center to get new clients. So a lot of that business stuff came after I realized that I could just layer that right on top of the skills I learned in an educational setting.
Okay, I love that. We love a pivot. Okay, but I always say being a teacher, you were prepared for everything. Girl.
That's right.
Right? You are a nurse, you're a doctor, you're a parent, you're a caretaker. Like on top of that. So if you are a teacher and you're listening, you're like, oh, I don't know. Girl, you are ready for more. Okay.
Seriously. It's funny because I was talking to this woman who is now a very successful entrepreneur in our space, financial literacy education. And she was like, because I was a teacher, I always think that if I don't want to do my business anymore, like I'm just going to have to go back to being a teacher. I was like, what? What would make you think that the only option you have is going back to the classroom when you literally are an entrepreneur with a successful business who started as a teacher? That's your first step. That doesn't mean you circle back. That's your first step. Now you can move to so many different areas, so many different lines of work. And so I'm shocked every time I hear teachers say like they don't know what else to do besides teach. I'm like, what do you mean? You have so many skills. Yes, really, honestly, anything.
Yes. So people always ask me like, how did you get this law passed, in the state of New Jersey, making financial education mandatory for middle school? And I'd be like, girl, I don't know. So no, that's not true. It's that like I one of my friends, Angela, she actually used to take my class at the United Way that I was teaching. At the time, she had like a nonprofit, but she just got to be really well known in Jersey City for her good works, and they convinced her to run for Assemblywoman. This is maybe like 5-6 years ago. And she said, okay. And the first thing she did was reach out to me and said, I think we should have some sort of financial education law. And I knew New Jersey had something light for high school, but I, from teaching preschool, was like, I want to see something for the babies. So we started to work on it, and we ended up getting a law passed for middle school. But if I'm being honest, I did it, like, I don't know the system. But people ask all the time, like, I'm just a bill sitting on Capitol Hill, like, girl.
Schoolhouse rock. Yes.
I don't know. So now we have you who has done it again and again and again and again. Yeah. So we're going to ask the Yanely, girl, how you get these laws passed, right? So like I said, I just was like, girl, I knew Angela and we worked together. Yeah. But like, what does it actually look like? Because people ask all the time, someone's listening and they're like, I want this in Texas. I want this in blah, blah, blah. So for one, what does your process look like? And then two, if someone is listening and wants to push it in their state, what can they do?
Yes. Okay. Well, first things first, just like you did, you have to get looped in and connected with somebody who is in the political system, right? Okay. Because the reality is most bills that get passed or that, become signed into law came from a bill author, a bill sponsor, or co-authors who are in office. And so for the most part, that's where it starts. You have to start connecting with somebody who's going to be the person to champion this issue by way of a clear bill that says this is what has to happen.
So tell me the type of people, like senator, governor, like what, like
senator,
in office? Okay.
So because we're talking about education, this is not a federal issue. Education in our country is highly localized. It's state by state by state. So it has to be a local official. So it could be a senator or it could be a representative in your state. It does have to be a state person. And then it could also be others like assembly people, council members. But the reality is the most of those bills that are successfully moved through the process within education have to go through the education committee. The education committee members are going to be senators on the education committee on the Senate side and representatives who are members of the education committee on the House side. Yes. So either side of the chamber, but you need somebody who's a senator or a rep to say, I care so much about education. I'm going to introduce this bill and make sure that it gets on the agenda for the next meeting of the education committee, because they have meetings all the time, but they don't always visit every bill that gets introduced.
Okay. So that's first. Like for example, I knew Assemblywoman Ann V. McKnight, but you're right. She then had to find like a co-sponsor who was a senator. That's right. And then she told me we have to first get through the committee, the education committee. To your point, I remember her telling me that she wanted me to testify, but I couldn't because I was out of state during that time. But I got to meet with some constituents, and so beforehand, like there were like some superintendents and principals or whatever to sit and talk to them about why I thought this was a really good idea. And so that way they could take it to the committee and say, because at first they were opposed to it. Because like so many educators, we're like, we don't need one more mandate for the school.
Another thing. Yes.
But as a teacher, I knew exactly what they were saying. I was like, sis, I get it. So this is how I envision it playing out in the classroom. And so at the end, they turned over and we're like, okay. And they were able to take that back to the committee themselves. And so, so then it goes through committee and then it gets voted on by what?
By all of the members on the education committee. So then it has to go on both sides. So whichever side of the chamber is started on. So let's say it starts in the House Committee of Education. They are going to have a meeting. They're going to put that bill on the agenda. They're all going to read through it. They're all going to discuss it. Some of them are going to nitpick, like, I don't like that language. I don't like that word. I don't like this or that. And then they'll give feedback. They'll do the vote. If it's a majority yays, it gets moved over to the next education committee. So it will be on the House side. If the Senate started, then it goes over to House. If the House started, it passes House, then it goes to to the Senate Education Committee. Both education committees on both sides of the chamber have to vote majority yes. Once that happens, the bill, where the bill originated, it ends up going back to that committee again, just to final cross the T's and dot the I's and make sure they like any amendments or changes that were made by the second committee that looked at it. And then if there's one other part of the process, which is a little annoying, but if there's any mention of money, appropriations or funds, then it might have to go to another meeting to get approved by folks who are going to look at that appropriation, who are going to look at that, the money part. Sometimes that's the appropriations committee, depending on the state. But the folks who deal with like the budgetary items in a bill, they will have to look at it and see like, well, where's that money coming from? Is this feasible before we go ahead and pass this bill? We need to make sure we have the money. And so that's why, when I do a lot of this work, I try and make sure that the bills don't really have any funding notes on them, because it's really not necessary, honestly. Most people today in financial education will say, oh, but then we can't buy textbooks. And I would try and tell people, what textbook is going to keep up to date with the constant changes in money in the world of finance? Like Cash App, Venmo didn't exist a couple years ago. Cryptocurrency didn't exist 10 years ago. You print a textbook, you're wasting your money. This has really got to be 21st century relevant. Tax laws change every few years. New apps come out. It's got to be online based. Now, you can print things, you can print articles, you can print worksheets and things. But the reality is, for this to be relevant and up to date, it has to be online based. So an online curriculum is generally going to be best. We really shouldn't be relying on textbooks and workbooks. And then the second thing is that they'll say, oh, but we need money for that curriculum. There are so many free providers. Council for Economic Education and Jumpstart have been in the game for so long. Other players like Junior Achievement, and so many. I mean, we could literally go on and on and on about the amazing free educational resources. Foolproof has resources. Different federal reserves from local, different state reserves have a bunch of curriculum. And GPF, where I work, they also have a huge curriculum for a full semester course for middle school, for high school, and additional units like cryptocurrency basics, the history of racism in finance, entrepreneurship. I mean, if you have the time and you want to really develop a comprehensive course, you have everything you need on this website, and it is free 99. So when people try to make this argument about the funding part, I'm saying, listen, that's just going to make the process longer and more difficult. And honestly, it's not necessary in 2023 and beyond.
So then both sides vote. If it goes majority and then the budget is not an issue, then it goes to the governor's desk?
Then it goes to the governor's desk. And every state is different when it comes to the governor. But the governor has to sign the bill so that it can become law, and has to be a wet ink signature. They have to actually sign. But some states have, special asterisks to that rule. So it'll be like the governor has to sign it within 14 days or it automatically becomes law. And it's like, so if the governor doesn't
opposite. Like, for example, in New Jersey, the governor at the time, he ain't my governor. Governor Christie, he said, I'm going to sign it. He was on his way out, didn't sign it. And so it's the opposite. It gets kicked out. It does not become law. And so we had to literally start the process again.
All over again.
Yes.
Girl, so you know how this works intimately. But yet every state's a little different. Some states, it'll be like they have 21 days, they have 14 days. If they don't sign, it becomes law. Or if they don't sign, they have to start the process all over again. And that happens any step in the process. So let's say you find the champions, you find the sponsors, the legislators who are going to introduce this bill. They're going to write it out the way that, they want it presented. Then they get yes votes in the whole education committee on the House side. Then it moves to the Senate side, and most people say no. Okay, well, now the bill's dead. Even though it passed the first part, it didn't pass the second part. It might pass the first part, go to the second part, get all yeses in the second chamber, in the second part, and then go back to the first part, and they don't like one of the amendments that the second education committee made. So now it's dead again. So many bills, most bills, the majority of bills every year that get introduced die a silent death.
Yes.
And so for these bills to be succeeding right now, I mean, it is amazing. Once the governor signs, it's like a big deal.
I know. I have to say, I have to shout out to like sister girl, Angela V. McKnight. She's one of the most successful law passers in the state of New Jersey. She has gotten so many laws. To your point, it's very difficult because the first iteration of our bill was elementary and middle school. Got to the governor's desk. He said he'd sign it. He left office, did not sign it. Petty Betty. Right? But God knows best because look at him now. Anyway. So it went back to the drawing board. And when we went back to the drawing board, all of a sudden these same people are like, why is elementary school in here? I'm like, it's the same bill as before. No, we don't like that. The kids
now
are too little.
Brand new.
Yes. And so we actually had to remove the elementary school component, and we just got the middle school component. At that point, we were like, let's just do something. And so that's what happened, that we were able to push it through. It did get signed, but they made us drop the elementary school part. So to your point.
And we get that all the time.
Yes.
We get people saying, well, we would support this if it included elementary school, middle school, and high school. But since it's only high school, we won't support. I'm like, you have to get specific when you're trying to get something done. It's hard enough to get one level in the education system. You're trying to do too much all at once. So, I mean, with the work at NGPF, I'll tell you, we came up with 5 principles. We did a lot of research. We came up with a bunch of reports. We looked at all of the latest data about the effectiveness of financial education. And we looked for the root. What is the one thing that actually makes it effective to changing behaviors, like helping students save more money, get better interest rates on their college loans, understand the FAFSA, know how to get the best rate on their car loan, have really good credit scores when they get into college and beyond. Like, what makes those results happen? And the main things that came up from the research was it has to be just in time. So one of the main pieces of research came from this meta-analysis of like 160,000 participants in this study. And the thing that they found was that if you teach them a little too early, it's great for exposure, but not for results, because what happens is that they lose it, they forget about it. By the time they're actually going to apply it, they're like, wait, what was that stuff we didn't learn about back when we were in the 2nd, 3rd grade? I don't remember. And so it's great for exposure, but not for results. And similar with middle school, great for exposure, great for preparing them for high school. But when it comes to the results really happen right when the students are going to apply the knowledge. So if you want them to learn about car insurance, do it when they got their driver's license. They can't get a driver's license till they're 16 years old. So it's got to be 16, 17 years old, which is junior year and senior year in high school. So the majority of the legislation that I've championed, that the work we do has pushed forward, is really legislation that includes junior and senior year having a required full semester class of standalone personal finance. None of this business of sharing this class with, so this part of the class is budgeting, and then this part is economics, and then that part is, no, it has to be full semester dedicated to nothing but personal finance topics.
I like that. Because I love that. I just literally took some notes, like just in time financial education, right when they apply the knowledge. That's why like college students is because they're in the thick of it, like, girl, I don't know how to manage.
Literally. We know.
No, this is awesome. So is this why you started to write? So what made you, after doing all this, you're passing these laws, you used to be a teacher, what made you say, I want to write a book? Like, how did that process start for you?
Girl, honestly, similar to you, like, there's so many things that you've done for your audience. You know what I mean? Like, you realize that what they ask you for, and you're like, all right, you know what? I'm going to put this together. Everybody wants me to mentor them. I can't do that. I'm going to put together my mentor, Tiffany. Like, you would kind of responded to like all this stuff that's coming to you. And so I would see all these subscriber comments in my YouTube videos. I would get DMs all the time, emails, and people be like, do you have a book? Like, when's your book coming out? You should write a book. You just know so much. And you're great at telling stories. You should write this book. And I would always be like, oh, no. And then eventually I'm like, why not? Why not put a book out there? It wasn't until I saw you and I saw, who else did I see in this space back in like 2015? There really weren't very many, girl. If I say it was only you, I'm not lying. But there really were not very many women of color, especially not Latina women, talking about money and financial education. So, I was like, okay, I think it would be valuable for me as a Latina, specifically in a first generation daughter of non-English speaking parents who had to try to navigate the money systems in this country somehow. And, they never had bank accounts. They never had credit cards, debit cards, investment accounts, none of that. So for me to grow up in that environment and be to the point where not only did I figure out money for myself and my community, but like helping my family, helping people, around me, I think a book makes sense for that long lasting impact and that thing that you can really give to people. And, you have so many books, but I think it really came from the community saying like, okay, MissBeHelpful, when is your MissB book coming out? And I'm like, okay, all right, I guess I'll do it. And COVID too, honestly, helped me think about like, can I do this? Do I have the time to do it? And I did spend a lot of time writing and jotting like, okay, the stories that I want to include and how I want my book to be different and how to make it stand out and things like that.
So so as a reader of your book, like what are they going to take away? What does make it different? How is it MissBeHelpful?
Yes. Okay. So for me, the biggest thing that I felt was missing from a lot of the books that have been written forever and ever, the classics, And for me, the first book I ever read about money was Women and Money by Susie Orman. And I have so much respect for Susie, but she's never going to know what it's like to, be in a household like the one I grew up in. And that's not her fault. That's just a fact. So knowing that I can teach similar to how Susie teaches and similar to how so many women in our space teach, but also have this lived experience, this perspective that's my secret sauce. That's my jam. That's the thing that most people would think is the Achilles heel. That's your weakness. It's not. It's your strength because it makes you unique. So for me, I was like, that's going to be my value prop. That's going to be the thing that makes my book really different. And so I knew it wasn't just going to be personal finance. It had to have my personal stories. So I sort of made my book a combination of stories and strategies. It's the financial stuff that all the tried and true, classic money books teach, but also through stories, through telling stories. But girl, when I was in elementary school, I won the New York State Storytelling Championship contest every year. I read 2nd grade, 3rd grade, 4th grade, 5th grade.
Yes!
Every year I was the winner. I would come there and be like, who's going to beat me? Not nobody. I was the winner. Every year I would come with my little cocky self and do. One year I did Anansi the Spider. And I mean, anybody who doesn't know, girl, the way these contests work, you memorize the book word for word, cover to cover. And you stand up there and the judges are sitting on a panel with the book in front of them as you are memorizing, performing the story word for word, making the different voices for the spider and for the bear and you're performing it like if you're back in the day, like in a cave telling stories, right? And then they are literally watching you to make sure you know the book word for word like this, flipping the pages. And then they rate you and they judge you and the best storyteller gets the trophy every year. So, I got that.
You ain't new to this. You true to this.
Thank you. Thank you.
No, but I love that. It's one of the things that I teach all the time, right? To some of my mentees, I'm like, nothing is wasted.
Right.
Nothing is wasted. The fact that you did this when, in elementary school, the fact that you were a teacher, the fact that you, worked on getting these laws passed, all of your upbringing, with your family, you being Dominicana, like all of these things come together to create the most amazing moment for where you are now. You are uniquely qualified to write your Mind Your Money, and to talk to your audience in a way that I can't reach, that someone else can't reach. They need you in this space.
I love that. And that's honestly when I owned that, because I think for a while I was scared. I'm like, but what's going to make me different though? Like there's already so many books. Like behind me in my office, I have so many books written by women. There's so many. We got Chelsea Fagan here. We got your book here. We got Ashley. We have Berna. There's so many books written by women here. Like I was like, how? I'm just going to add another one to the mix, but at the end of the day, I realized, yes, we need another one in the mix. We need so many more. Do you think that any of these white men who wrote any of these other books I have up here ever said to themselves, am I going to really add another book about money as another white man? They never said that. So why do we do that, right? We have this imposter syndrome and these doubts. So once I finally owned that and said, yes, I do need to add my story. And it was like I was compelled and called to do it. So I think for me, I would encourage anybody who feels like, oh, they're not a natural writer, or maybe they don't have a book in them. I'm not a natural writer. I'm a natural storyteller, but I still felt like I had something in me to put in this book. And if you have been thinking about it, but you're not so sure, here's your nudge. Here's your sign. Write that book.
What is one of your favorite stories from the book? So if someone's going to read Mind Your Money and they're like, girl, I love storytelling. Like, what is one of your favorite stories from the book? And like, what do you hope people take away from that story?
Yes. Okay, girl, I have so many stories in there, but the one I always tell people about is the one that was the hardest to include, which was I got caught stealing when I was, girl, I was a little mess. I was a little mess.
I used to steal too when I was little.
So
when I was like 6
so
or 7, I
have.
used to steal comic books until I got caught. And that behind whooping I got after, I said, not on today, tomorrow, or moving forward.
Girl, but you know what? You were 6 or 7. You were so young. That's a good age to like learn that like don't do that anymore, because you're still so young, that you get away with it. But I work with high school students and college students a lot through the work that we do with high school education advocacy. And I meet these teens, and a lot of times, I see the ones that are constantly getting kicked out of school. They're constantly getting dismissed, pushed aside because they got in trouble fighting or because they got caught stealing. And they're just written off as like the troublesome kids or like, and I'm like, no, I have experienced that. And so I wanted to make sure to include that story. But basically I was in a Dwayne Reed with my sister, and we're walking around, and there was at my church, there was like a Kris Kringle gift swap type of thing. And I got my god sister. So she was very much into makeup at that time. I was not. I was like 11 or 12 years old. So, I wanted to buy her some makeup. So I walked into Dwayne Reed. I'm looking at the little lipstick and lip gloss aisle, and they're all like $8, $9, $10. I had $4 in my pocket. I was like, I was like, it's not gonna work. I can't do it.
The
You know,
math
I
ain't
can't buy
mathing.
it. The math ain't mathing. So I just thought like, I'm just gonna take it. So I slipped it up my sleeve of my t-shirt.
Mm-hmm.
Child, I thought I was so slick. I put it right on my sleeve and I was right under the camera. Like,
Oh my gosh.
I thought I was so slick. I didn't even check around, do any, I just ripped the little barcode off, put it right up my sleeve. And so my sister had no clue. I put it in my book. I'm so sorry, sis, because she did not have a clue. She really did not know what I was up to. So we were about to walk out and the security guard, it was this big fat security guard, came up to me. He's like, you think you got tricks up your sleeve? And I was like, huh? My sleeve? What did he know? What does he know? What's going on here? And he grabbed us. He like put his hand on my back, said, you need to walk this way. And he took us to the back of the Dwayne Reed and played the video of me slipping the thing right on my sleeve. I couldn't even deny it. There was nothing I could do.
Yeah.
And they called my parents. My parents were away and I don't know what they were doing. So my godmother had to come and pick me up in her van. She was so disappointed. I was embarrassed because now it's not even my sister and my mom and dad who knows. My godmother knows. Everybody knows. So I was so embarrassed. And my parents, I always tell everybody, and in the book I wrote that even though that was embarrassing, and yes, I felt shame and I was like, all right, this is not really who I am. I need to not be doing this. Mm-hmm. But it was really when I saw my mom and dad's faces. Like they looked like they wanted to cry. I have not seen my dad cry very many times in my life. And he looked like he was like, how could you? Like we, as poor as we have always been, we have never modeled that to you. We never showed you that stealing is okay. We've never stolen, even when we had it at our roughest. That's not who we are. And so I just felt so bad. And I was like, in my mind, I just made a decision that I was going to be Little Miss Goody Two Shoes. I was going to do perfectly in school. I was going to redeem myself and show them that, this is not who I am. And you raised me right type of thing.
Yeah. So what's the financial lesson that you learned and that you hope that when people read that lesson in the book? First of all, let me just commend you for sharing that because it's not easy to share the things about ourselves, that, the choices we've made. But I mean, I know we all like to pretend like we're perfect on IG, girl. Take the filter off. So I just want to commend you for taking the filter off and sharing that story because no one goes through this life not making mistakes. And then 2, what lesson did you learn financially and what financial lesson do you hope to pass on?
Yes. Okay, I'm going to start with the lesson I want to pass on because I think that's the powerful part of this is kind of, what I insinuated earlier was a lot of my work with teenagers. A lot of them are, they get in trouble for things like stealing and fighting and things. And again, I think a lot of the adults in their life just write them off as these troublemaking kids and you just bad. You just not, you no good. And I really think that story hopefully will show, first of all, I wasn't stealing to just be bad. I had no malicious intent. I was trying to give a gift at the church to my god sister. Like it was
not stealing for Jesus.
Right. It was Robin Hood. It was stealing from people that needed to give it to the good. Like I was trying to do good. And I'm like, first of all, you never know what is going on with somebody, especially younger, like teenagers and younger students. Like you have to lean in rather than dismiss them off, write them off and tell them, oh, you're not going to be going to this trip. You're not going to we just lead to the consequences of the results. And instead of saying, let's lean in and find out what happened. What was the input? What was going on when you made this decision? What's going on in your life? Like, poverty, first of all, is the number one reason why young people are stealing. They're hungry. They don't have what they want. They're constantly being told no, no, no. So I think that lesson for other adults, whoever you are, if you work in an educational setting, is especially relevant to you to have some grace because these young kids are dealing with a lot, and especially young kids in environments that are, poverty or near to poverty situations. We really have to have grace for them. What they're going through in their mind, especially with social media nowadays, they see everybody stunting and they don't have that. So just be empathetic more to these younger students, teenagers especially. And then I think for me, the real lesson there was like, you have to understand that when you're going through your life, making your choices, everybody else is affected. Even when you think it's just you. And for me, I thought, my sister don't know. She don't know how to do with it. She got, wired all up into that situation with me. She was in the back room, embarrassed too. Because of my choice that I made with my little money or lack thereof money, my sister got all caught up in that. And so I want you to think constantly about when you're making your financial decisions and you're making your budget. Yes, money can be a very selfish thing. Like, what am I going to do with my money? But it also has all of these connections to the other people in your life, your parents, your children, your community, your family. Like, So for me, my money is it's like, for me, it's personal. I make decisions based on me and selfish reasons. But honestly, now more than ever in my 30s, I'm like being way more mindful of how I am using my money in ways that affect my family, uplift my family, help support them. And in general, thinking beyond myself to my community too.
I love that. That's such a great lesson. I love because storytelling, especially for brown people, has been one of the core vehicles that we've used to pass down like our heritage, our lessons, so I love that you're literally leaning into, like, if you were to lean into the DNA that makes you Dominicana, you would find that storytelling is a critical component to that. So the fact that you brought that forth and mix it with what's now, which is financial education and where you are now, it's just beautiful. And that is what makes you different. What's so beautiful is that you don't have to do anything. The collection of all that you've been and all that you will be is what makes you unique already. You just have to show up and not be afraid to shine. And so you are shining, girl. Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes. And this, it sounds like so beautiful and so easy. And it's difficult. It's difficult to be authentic, especially when you feel like you're in a space where you're going to be judged or where you're the only one like that. Especially me. When I went off to college, I was the only one. Now, Tiff, early on on your podcast on Brown Ambition, you talk a lot about like your upbringing and how Mandy and you had like very different upbringings, right? And I don't remember if it was like 5th or 6th episode, but you talked about like you went to middle school and high school with a lot of white students.
Yes.
I was the opposite. So I went to an elementary school and a middle school where everybody was Black. Okay. Everybody was, I grew up in Bushwick. Yes. In Bushwick in Brooklyn, it's like everybody is Haitian, Jamaican, Bayesian, Trinidadian. Like I had all the like the Caribbean Black. Yes. Like in Brooklyn, like in Bushwick in the 90s and early 2000s, that's all it was. And then you had some Dominicans and Puerto Ricans, but really it was predominantly Black Caribbeans. And so that's the cultural experience I had. In my home, it was very much like rice and beans, arroz con pollo, this and that. But when I was in school with my friends, everybody was Black. All my girlfriends have always been Black. And so it's this interesting mix of Black culture and Dominican and Latin culture. But when I got to middle school and even, when I got to high school, it was very similar still, but it was a bigger school. So that's when I started to see, like, for the first time in my life, I met a white student, like a peer of mine that was white. I had never. The only white people I had ever been exposed to were on television or my teachers, some of my teachers. So I remember, to this day, I will never forget, I went up to this little white boy. I was 14 years old. It was first week of freshman year in high school. And I went up to him and I said, "So you Puerto Rican or Dominican?" And he looked at me, he said, "No, I'm Jewish." And I was like, "But like Puerto Rican Jewish?"
Like, girl, what are you doing here? Are you lost?
I was like, "But you just look like you're not Black, so you're either Puerto Rican or you're Dominican." Like, I don't understand. What do you mean? You don't look Chinese to me, so you must be Puerto Rican or Dominican. He's like, "No, I'm Jewish. Like, I'm white." And I didn't understand because I had never met others like, that were my age. So the first time I was exposed to white kids around me was high school. So I was already 14 years old. So come on, you already understand the way I talk, the way I act, the way I walk, like my energy, my Brooklyn energy, like it was a combination of the Black environment I was in and my Dominican culture. So fast talking, fast walking, sass, like very much, a specific type of vocabulary, even the way I walked, right? So then when I got to college, girl, that was a culture shock. Okay. To be around extremely wealthy and predominantly white. So I went to Brown on a full scholarship. And girl, I was like plucked out of Brooklyn and placed onto this beautiful idyllic campus in Providence, Rhode Island, like 4 hours away from home, by myself. And that for me was the first time that I really had to decide, like, am I going to be my authentic self and be proud of how different I talk, how different I act, how I talk with my hands and I'm so loud, and am I going to keep doing that, or am I going to assimilate and, be more like these kids around me so I can fit in and so that I don't stand out too much and call too much attention to myself. And that I really struggled with that my first, year, 2 years there, until I found others like me. I found my tribe of girls, my friends, and was like, oh, no, okay, I'm not alone. I'm not alone. We're here. We're just in much fewer numbers.
I love that. So it's like you continue to do that as MissBeHelpful. You continue to create space for people who might not otherwise have space in this environment of financial education. Right. I love that. So you see how it's all full circle?
Yes.
Okay.
Girl, I feel like I'm in therapy. You just read my whole...
So if the girls and the guys, if they want to buy Mind Your Money, where can they get it?
Yeah, so you can get it at mindyourmoneybook.com.
Do you see what I told her? I was waiting. I said, let me see.
Y'all, if you're watching on YouTube, first of all, you see my leveled up space here because I've been doing a lot of podcasting, a lot of promoting the book. And Tiff so generously gave me so much of her time. A couple weeks ago, we sat and was just like, all right, girl, you need your space to promote your book. You need to have your site. You need to be talking about, don't be telling people you can buy it wherever they sell books. What does that mean? Give them your site. And Tiff leveled me all the way up. First of all, my space behind me is all thanks to Tiff.
So just so you can't see on YouTube,
book,
if you're hearing, she has the Mind Your Money book. Like I told her, I was like blown up on a, she has it blown up beautifully on the wall. So it's like, Al, I see you. When I see you, I see her. Good. Yes. And then I was like, make sure you get that URL. So I love that you have mindyourmoneybook.com. That's what we talk about. So the girls can know. All right. So mindyourmoneybook.com. Okay.
They can learn about the book there. The chapters, the descriptions are there. The link to buy the book, and also a free guide that comes with the book, which has so many amazing resources. One of the things I spent hours doing was I went through everybody that I follow that I really trust, that I like and admire, your content, Mandy, so many creators. And I made a list of over 200 creators in the personal finance space. And it's linked in a spreadsheet in the downloadable guide that you just click and follow. So you can change your whole feed. Your whole timeline is going to look so different now because you're following educators talking about money and finance and not just, all the celebrity drama. We like that. That's cute. But really getting the money stuff in. So all that is on mindyourmoneybook.com.
Yes, I love it. I'm on the site right now. It's looking real cute. Okay. Buy the book, the chapters. Yes. I'm just so proud of you, Yanely. Honestly, I love that you show up authentically and fully yourself. I love that you bring all of your Brooklynness, Dominicana-ness, like feminine energy. Like, I love that you just bring your full self to the table and then you put it into your book, Mind Your Money Book. So if you want to lean into financial education in a way that speaks to how you receive information, especially as a person of color, through storytelling and so not just stories, but also stories and financial lessons, go head over to mindyourmoneybook.com. And if they want to find you on the socials, where can they do that?
Yes, you can follow me anywhere at MissBeHelpful, MissBe Helpful.
Yeah. So you're on Instagram. Do you TikTok?
I do TikTok just a little bit. TikTok, I need to do better. Y'all need to push me on there to just post all my Instagram reels on there. But Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, I'm on TikTok and YouTube, all as MissBeHelpful.
Yes. Well, is there anything that we missed out on? Anything you want to share with the people before we say bye to you?
Ooh, I mean, there's so many things going on, girl. The one thing I will add is I think that it's so important to be targeting young people about money because a lot of us, we either avoid it because we're afraid that we don't really know how to bring it up, or we're kind of a little ashamed either because we don't have money and we don't want them to know we don't have money and we're struggling, or because we have so much money and we don't want our kids to feel entitled to that money, and so we just kind of don't talk about it. And regardless of your situation, where you are on the spectrum of having access to money, we somehow all end up just not talking about it with these teenagers or with these kids in our lives. So I'm actually hosting a new podcast with Marketplace called Financially Inclined, which is targeting money lessons to live life your own way. It's specifically for a teenage audience. So if you have a niece, a nephew, a kid, anywhere, tweens all the way up to teenage years, considering college or alternatives to college, we're talking about everything. We're talking about the basics of stock market. We're talking about budgeting. We're talking about, should I get my credit card, my first credit card, how to buy a first car, like all these intro things that oftentimes, they don't really know who to go to talk about it. So check that out as well. It's called Financially Inclined.
Yes, thank you so much, Yanely Espinal. No.
Espinal.
Yanely Espinal, pues está aquí para conmigo. Es my amiga también. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just literally saying like 7 Spanish words.
Has anybody ever taken all the clips of you singing on every episode and all your life, just put together like a reel of all your songs?
MissBeHelpful, who was my Spanish teacher, is literally ashamed of me because, I took Spanish from 6th grade all the way through college. Why is that my Spanish? My sister, meanwhile, Tracy, be like, hola, me llamo Tracy. I'm like, how you know all that? She's like, girl, we took it since 6th grade. I'm like, I got about 3 sentences.
Because when you don't use it, you lose it.
I know. So, we're going to start. I'm going to practicar.
Practicar, eso mismo. Anytime. Tú mándame textos, mensajes, y le respondo en español.
See, I kind of understand. She said, somebody I can text her, she can respond in Spanish. So, look at that. Un poquito. Comprendo. Anyway, let me not embarrass myself any further. Thank you so much, Yanely. You were such a delight. You can come back anytime.
Thanks, girl.
Hey, BA fam. We're on YouTube. Woohoo. Thank you so much for watching. please like this video and subscribe to the channel.
And while you're at it, why don't you go over to that little bell icon and just tap that for us. Show the BA fam how much you love us. And that way you'll also get notifications when new videos drop. Also, share the channel with a friend. We're always like, tell a friend, tell a friend, tell a friend. And thank y'all so much again for all the support.